Chapter 11. The gloves are off. Raylan leaves the cafe and nods at the two silent crows sitting at their usual table. They are brothers, refugees from Ranth, like many others driven from their homelands by the ever-increasing heat. Their commitment to the cause is rooted in lived experience. Surin recruited them some time ago, and whenever they meet in the cafe, they are around. Raylan turns toward the market and orders his car to the next larger highway, Foster Street. His mind still cannot let go of the unsolvable puzzle of their mission failure. It feels like one or more pieces are missing.
What if it's someone I know?
He thinks.
What if it's Siren?
The thought of even suspecting his triple lover leaves him nauseated. Raylan's paranoia forces even more outrageous ideas through his mind.
It has to be someone with high-level clearance. Everin?
He tries to calm himself down by checking all the facts again, for the 100th time. His display shows his car approaching his position. He spots his Toro 500 slowing down, carefully navigating to the parking lane. After the car stops, the passenger door opens and Raylan lets himself fall into the cushions.
Back to headquarters.
He groans, folding his arms behind his neck. The car accelerates back into traffic and Raylan is left with his musings about the upcoming strategy meeting. His father and all the Winslow brass will be there to discuss the future cooperation with the ATC.
Chair Crow Winslow Sr. and his board members.
Raylan snorts at the image of these weasels and their unconditional obedience to his father.
They could oust him with a simple majority vote.
He thinks with disgust. Yet, his father's system of fear and reward operates flawlessly, especially the fear part. There are rumors that Raylan Winslow Sr. holds detailed private information on each board member.
They are like I was,
he thinks.
Caught between bliss and the fear of losing it.
Raylan realizes his father's system worked on him too. The Toro 500 enters the city freeway and heads toward the harbor. The first giant cranes loom in the distance as the car speeds south. The city's harbor is a major global hub, controlling much of the intercontinental transport on Lasses. Its docks and wharves are sprawling along the coast of the Bay Area, stretching out toward the horizon. Feeling somewhat more relaxed, Raylan's mind starts to wander while he gazes over the glistening waters of the bay.
Looks so peaceful from afar,
he muses.
Maybe I should not look too close, if I want peace. Area.
He calls out loudly and straightens in his seat. He still needs her confirmation. Can I assist you? The car's AI jumps to life. Do you mean your acquaintance area? At 118 East, Spinford Lane?
What? No. Never mind. Keep driving.
Raylan replies, surprised that his car's AI still retains Arya's old address. He recalls his dinner invitation to Arya's triple and opens his display. His new arm clip still feels foreign to him, even though all settings are identical. The image of the bolt cutter crushing through his arm clip forms in his mind.
Even if they do find the old one, it's unusable,
he reassures himself. Quickly, he flips through his private contacts and types his message to Arya. The desert worm fillets are not getting any better. Tomorrow, candle. Raylan gazes out over the harbor waters, where small, beetle-like tugboats nudge huge container ships into their docks. Like giant storks, cranes slowly roll along the docks, waiting for cargo to be unloaded. A massive building complex with sloped walls looms like a fortress over the other buildings in the area. Winslow Industries headquarters. Within reside the mainframes and their necessary infrastructure to run a global enterprise.
I should do a mission here.
Raylan reflects on the importance of these buildings for the smooth operation of Winslow Industries. A hit here and Winslow Industries would need years to recover.
And that's why they have such a good security system.
Raylan sighs to himself. He knows because he had assisted in their maintenance on his first assignment. Nothing but a frontal assault with heavy equipment would breach the headquarters' defenses. The car exits the city freeway and merges with the street traffic. Large overland trucks occupy the right lane in an endless procession, patiently waiting their turn to load or unload their cargo. His arm clip vibrates, and he reads Arya's response. It's a date. With Chiron and Everin, your place, tomorrow night. Be there. Smile. Raylan smiles in relief and immediately types back, nice. We'll have a good time. Gotta go, heart. The car slows down and turns onto a spacious roundabout, dwarfed by the towering dark silhouette of Winslow headquarters. A gate opens and automatic turrets track the route of the car toward the entrance building. The brightly lit glass front lobby is crowned by a wide glass dome. 6 elevator shafts leave the lobby and sloping up the outside of the massive structure, and elevators constantly shuttle personnel in and out of the headquarters. Raylan exits the car and walks toward the lobby, already wearing his smiling daytime persona. The glass doors slide open as he strides toward the expansive reception desk. An AMA clerk behind the desk greets him with a bow and extends a folder out to him.
"Oh, Winslow Jr.,
She says.
so good to see you again."
The clerk beams with joy over the opportunity to interact with the son of Raylan Winslow, Sr.
"Here are the documents and reports for tonight's board meeting.
She says.
You'll have wireless access to the data in the main hall. It's on the 18th floor."
Thank you, Leah.
Raylan replies after glancing at her name tag. He offers a warm smile, holding her gaze longer than necessary. The AMA clerk's cheeks color with the unexpected attention.
"The meeting begins in 10 minutes.
She adds softly, quickly breaking her gaze to sort document folders on her desk. Raylan grins to himself for startling the AMA clerk, but he realizes that his little power games are a relic from a past that he thought overcome. As he waits for the next elevator, he leafs through the papers to get an overall impression. There is nothing on strategy options, just summary after summary on successful projects with other industry corporations and the Anti-Terror Corps.
What's up your sleeves this time, Dad?
Raylan muses about the intent of this strategy meeting. Usually, these meetings are about singling out underperforming branches and listening to the execution-style comments of his father. Discussing future strategies is not his father's forte.
You never care for other opinions, do you, Dad?
Raylan reflects on his own quarrels with his father when he was still living in Winslow Manor. His father forges opinions into facts, like chain links and an armor protecting him in his insane reasoning. The 18th floor is reserved for press conferences and other public affairs of Winslow Industries. The entrances to the conference halls are marked with white sandstone columns. A wide corridor leads to the main hall, which offers a view over the surrounding harbor. As the elevator opens, Raylan spots the tall figure of his father in conversation with some of the board members, their assistants quietly listening in behind them. Cyphron is among them. Raylan recalls his orders for Cyphron to stand in at the university, to cover for his meeting with Terran.
I bet you already snitched on me, didn't you?
Raylan frowns at his assistant's incessant attempts to control his daily life. As he steps out of the elevator, a hand reaches for his shoulder, and a jovial voice sounds in Raylan's ear.
"Ah, Raylan Winslow Jr., welcome to the board meeting."
The thick, jewelry-laden hand on Raylan's shoulder belongs to a corpulent Ahmad that grins at him invitingly. Heads turn toward the elevator at the sound of her loud voice, and many return Raylan's gaze with a respectful nod.
Alma Susgrofa, how good to see you.
Raylan's flawless light response is the result of endless meetings with others of her sort. The Ama takes his arm and leads him toward the main hall. Raylan takes a slender tubular glass off a server's tray and tastes the balanced composition of verloren fruit, spices, and alcohol.
"So, why did your father call this meeting?"
The Ama whispers, glancing around secretively.
If I only knew.
Raylan replies playfully and tries to slip out of her massive arm.
"Oh, come on.
The Ama purrs.
You can tell me."
She draws him closer, glancing down at her bulging Fatima muscle and back up to Raylan, smiling invitingly.
By the gods, I'm blind.
He jokes to himself at the sight of the flabby mass presented to him. He clears his throat and evades another grip quite elegantly.
Would I lie to you?
He asks.
I really don't know.
He promises and steps backward. He bumps into someone and turns around to excuse himself.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Raylan stops his apology as he finds Cyphron standing in his way, smiling her cold, deliberate smile.
Cyphron, so good to bump into you.
Raylan says.
Did you enjoy the university lecture? What was it?
Raylan recalls the topic of the lecture he sent Cyphron on his behalf.
Yes. Something with prehistoric gender functions, right?
He enjoys sticking it to Cyphron ever since she has been his assistant. Ever since she took over his life at Winslow Industries.
Yes, people were pristine in their ways of life back then.
Cyphron replies, seemingly thoughtful.
They always had 3 genders in a triple, not like today.
She adds. challenging him to talk about his own two-gender triple. Raylan senses a new, different kind of self-confidence in Cyphron. Her cold smile emanates a self-awareness that is new to her usually cynical servitude.
What's up with you, Len?
Raylan feels the shift in their relationship and is puzzled about what brought about this change.
Well, people do change. You know,
He says.
some call it.
Cyphron interrupts him rudely.
Excuse me, I have to talk to your father.
She turns around and leaves Raylan standing.
You little bitch.
He thinks aggravated.
I'll bury you in boring reports until you lose that attitude, little lady.
Although Raylan is glad about every minute of Cyphron's absence, he still feels disrespected as her superior. As Raylan enters the main hall, some of the board members and their assistants are still talking in groups or enjoying the view over the harbor. A large oval executive table thrones in the middle of the hall, the front face featuring a slightly higher and broader chair. A technician checks some test holographs in the middle of the table. Some board members are already seated. Raylan ambles along the row of chairs and finds his name tag, right next to his father's chair. He tosses the folder on the table and sits down. Glancing over the table, Raylan watches board members diligently check their displays, quietly conferring with each other. An older crow approaches his chair and greets him with a nod.
Well, Raylan,
Before the crow can continue, Raylan stops him.
I'm sorry, Uncle Baron. I really don't know anything about this.
His uncle grunts, folding his arms as he gazes over the hall.
I heard that Emma Zarin and her crew have been fired. The position of the head of Winslow's security is open, right? Is it yours?
The crow looks down at Raylan, who tries not to act surprised at this news. Emma Zarin was a vivid terrorist hater, but her morals were bound by the law, a paladin for the wrong cause.
Mine? I don't know.
Raylan plays for time to get to grips with the idea. His father never mentions anything to him, but the idea of him as head of Winslow Security? He would have access to master keys, governmental infrastructure, and all ATC communications. Too good to be true. He looks up at his uncle and shrugs his shoulders.
You know, Dad,
He says.
he never lets anyone know, right?
If that ain't the damn truth.
His uncle growls, scratching his cheek.
Oh, the new blueprints for the mainframe extensions are in.
The older crow says.
I'll have the technicians look at it and you can do your security analysis thing, whatever it is.
Sure thing.
Raylan found his Uncle Baron as one of the few likable Winslow executives, maybe because of his family ties, but probably more because his uncle never meddles in company politics. His realm is the mainframes and AI systems in the subsurface level of the headquarters. He explains.
You'll have to set up some kind of...
Suddenly, the lights dim and his father's entrance is highlighted by a single spotlight. Behind him, half a dozen assistants follow, with Cyphron making up the rear.
Gods, Dad. Don't you overplay this a little?
Raylan is embarrassed by a presentation usually reserved for presenting new product lines to the press. His father's hard face scans the table, giving nods here and there as he passes. When he reaches the front face of the table, he shortly nods at Raylan and motions Cyphron near. Once seated, his assistants fan out in a half circle behind him and fold their arms behind their backs. They all wear new uniform-like suits with a silver W embroidered on their breast pockets. Cyphron stands to the right of her boss, cradling an electronic tablet in her arms.
This is a joke, right?
Raylan is stunned. The entrance, the insignia, the orchestrated pose of his assistants, a demeanor meant to instill not just fear, but also a sense of personalized obedience. Raylan leans back and rests his head against the cushion, intrigued and uneasy about where this may go. His father sits in silence for a moment, his arms folded before him. Then, his deep, sharp voice rings through the hall.
Dear members of the board, I have asked you to join me here today to discuss our future cooperation with the Federal Anti-Terror Corps. We have had some success in protecting our assets here on Lasses, but federal support has been weak, and therefore see the intermediate future of Winslow Industries in danger. If the ATC cannot guarantee our safety abroad, we will have to act ourselves.
A low mumble rises in the hall, but Crow Winslow demands silence with his raised hand.
Without protection against terrorist activity, we will lose access to profitable resources in both Mranth and Kront. In the long run, the government cannot defend our property. Must I remind you that the refugee influx has tripled this year?
Raylan exhales slowly and tries to remain calm. He promised Terran to act cool around his dad, but it takes a lot out of him to listen to these outlandish conspiracy theories. Instead, he tries to invoke the images of Terran and Saren smiling and laughing at him just like today. Pretending to listen, he lets his mind wander.
I have to see Terran later to check what the council advises. Maybe they can help.
Absent-mindedly, his gaze wanders over the people at the table, all heeding their master's words. When his eyes sweep further, he meets Cyphron's cold stare. She is looking directly at him without smug smile or playful obedience, more like observing an insect in an interesting experiment. His father's babbling words take on meaning again.
Who will you trust to secure our future? A bunch of glass-pedal politicians who shit their pants when the climate hiccups, or your own people that keep you safe. I will not see our next generation suffer for the sins of today.
He dramatically motions to his son. Raylan stares out into the dark harbor with a stone-faced expression.
It is time to stand independent.
Winslow calls out.
This is not about aggression. It is preservation. It is our duty.
His father spreads his arms and his eyes pass from board member to board member.
Therefore, it is our duty to protect what is ours. We will form a shield against the chaos of the future. The Winslow Armed Forces.
Oh gods, please throw him some brain. Woff. Sounds like a puppy yelping for its mommy.
Raylan feels like he is watching a bad movie. He surveys the board, but only sees nodding heads and fist knuckles tapping on the table.
Will there be tanks and jet fighters with the Winslow logo?
Raylan asks over the tapping noises. He wants to plant a picture in the heads of the whole board. The sheer insanity of the plan must be clear to them. His father looks down at him in barely veiled disgust.
My government channels indicate that the ATC could be segmented and parts of it privatized. Therefore, there will be heavy equipment in the Winslow Armed Forces.
Alen raises her hand and leans forward.
First of all, that is a magnificent solution, Chaircrow Winslow,
she says. She bows her head and continues.
The final name may need some change for a better public acceptance, but the main question is, what type of campaign should we run to align the mainstream opinion?
Instruct the media to carry a tone of necessity in the face of insecure times.
Crow Winslow replies. Another board member raises his hand, asking,
Will the Civil Rights Commission not object against a private military?
The forces will be under formal governmental supervision.
Winslow reports. All board members not in agreement to the implication oil up a few central governmental cogs, and you can do what you want. A Crow executive from the logistics branch raises his hand.
Will there be new logistic considerations in supplying our troops?
Well, now we're at our troops already?
Raylan snorts to himself, amazed at how quickly the concept of a private army evolves into something personal. No one at the table seems to think this through. Winslow Sr. waits a few more moments, so the board can fully absorb the idea of an armed force in the corporation.
We do not have to develop from ground up, but important infrastructure must be established with new personnel. Board member Thoris.
He addresses a Crow with full black hair.
The sports and youth entertainment divisions will screen young Crow and Alme interested in a career with our forces.
Yes, Chair Crow. No, Len?
The Crow asks carefully.
No, we need brawn, not brains.
And am I assistant in the back gasps audibly? Raylan's father locks her eyes with a stare until she averts her eyes.
We will assign different task groups to work out detailed plans during the next weeks,
Winslow says.
The respective group leader will report on a weekly basis. Len Cyphron Chirna will align the task groups and organize the final structure as the new head of Winslow Security. Therefore, she will be your contact on this matter.
Cyphron bows slightly and gives the board an indifferent smile.
So you want to see me break down after denying me a promotion?
Raylan chuckles at his father's idea. Yes, the job would have made things much easier for the Ecos, but having Cyphron off his back feels so much better.
Or Cyphron has her own stakes in this.
Raylan glances at Cyphron, who senses his gaze. She looks back with a subdued but triumphant little smile that dances around her lips. Her eyes gleam unnaturally at the prospect of soon wielding real power.
So that's your goal, General Chirna? Well, good luck in your wars against the climate.
Raylan despises people who pour all their energy into something completely irrelevant like personal power. The devil's advocate in his younger mind would have flagged such thoughts as ironic, considering that the Ecos' purpose seems irrelevant to many. But the internal challenger of his youth was silenced long ago, as Raylan learned the value of clear opinions without dissent. A low murmur flows through the hall as everyone tries to fathom the new situation. Raylan Winslow Sr. gets up from his chair in one resolute motion and raises his sharp voice once more.
I congratulate all board members on their support in these difficult times. Your decision will keep Winslow Industries strong in the face of our uncertain future. You and your families will be secure under the Winslow umbrella.
He hints at a short bow and steps aside to talk to Cyphron. Raylan watches as the other board members discuss the details of the endeavor, their assistants approaching with electronic tablets at the ready.
Your decision? I didn't see any vote on this.
Raylan recalls earlier board meetings where the members at least feigned independence by their votes. This seems to be a thing of the past. Who needs a vote when you control the voters? His father is absorbed in his conversation with Cyphron, and she responds by taking notes. He stops talking, briefly glancing at Raylan. Cyphron follows his gaze. She touches his arm and motions him away from his son. Raylan caught the moment out of the corner of his eye, but remains motionless.
Yeah, gloat all you want. You'll go down with him, Cyphron.
Raylan's hatred for his former assistant reaches new heights. On top of taking his job, she would also raise a private army under the control of his father. His hate transforms into energy for a direct confrontation with his father and Cyphron. He gets up and approaches them with measured strides, putting on a meaningless smile. He addresses Cyphron.
Congratulations. It looks like you found your purpose, General.
He salutes, the coldness of his smile matching hers.
Thank you.
Cyphron accepts his compliments and looks down at his new arm clip.
I see you have a new arm clip.
She states.
Nice design. What happened to the old one?
She asks casually as she glances over the crowd.
I turned it off and lost it somewhere. No problem. I had the backup on my mainframe.
Raylan replies with the same casual tone, following Cyphron's gaze over the crowd. He is slightly irritated by Cyphron's interest in his arm clip.
Does she suspect something?
Raylan is sure that if Cyphron knew, he would already sit in a federal prison cell. He turns to his father.
Let's drop the charade, Father.
He thinks as he braces for their conversation.
What do you want?
The sharp voice of his father is filled with repulsion for his son's presence. Raylan calmly offers him an empty smile.
What do I want?
Raylan plays surprised.
I thought you wanted something from me. Why else would you have me here, right?
His strength to oppose his father has grown considerably over the years, although it has not yet reached the level of pity that would be necessary for closure.
You are part of the board. Therefore, your presence is required. Is that all?
Crow Winslow looks down at his son, his emotionless eyes staring at Raylan under furrowed brows.
No, Dad. That is not all.
Raylan straightens his posture as Cyphron interrupts.
Chair Crow Winslow is quite busy if—
You shut up.
Raylan cuts her short, his eyes squarely locked with his dad's stare.
Go, play with your soldier toys. You let me come here to put me down in front of the board.
Raylan confronts his dad, gesturing at the executive table.
Tell me, Dad, was it as good for you as it was for me?
Cyphron visibly stiffens at Raylan's insult.
Denial of reality is your weakness, son.
His father responds sharply, ignoring Raylan's impertinence.
Acceptance of insanity is yours.
Raylan shoots back and continues.
Do you really think the people will allow a second independent army in their homeland? You are insane.
Cyphron shuffles her feet nervously, sensing the energy build-up between the two adversaries. Clearing her throat, she assists Raylan's father.
Law-abiding people will accept what they are told to accept.
She takes off her blue sunshades and looks at Crow Winslow Sr., searching his face for approval. His benevolent nod lets her bask in her future power even more. She turns to Raylan.
And outlaws.
Cyphron bares her immaculate teeth in a cold grin.
Outlaws will pay dearly for their disapproval.
The heavy hand of Raylan's father falls on her shoulder, halting her from further revelations.
We will discuss the matter of security later.
His hand almost gently sweeps down her arm. For a moment, his eyes turn soft with affection.
Was that a smile, Dad?
Cyphron and his father. More than lord and servant? This thought is unsettling, and even lets him forget Cyphron's cryptic words and his father's response.
Who's the poor ama, Dad?
Raylan thinks cynically as he tries to digest the idea that his father has an affair. His father, always on the moral high ground.
It's easy when you make your own morals, right?
He thinks disgusted.
How's Emma Mom, by the way?
Raylan asks with a deliberate smirk.
She's been on vacation on Kronth, I hear?
He adds innocently. His father's veins swell as he steps forward and grips Raylan's shoulders. He turns him away from the crowd and growls in a low voice.
You'll never be the son that I intended you to be. I know that now.
The grip on Raylan's shoulder tightens as his father leans in to speak into his ear.
You are but a pawn, and that will never change. Stay out of my way, or I will crush you.
You're already dead to me.
Raylan spits the words back into his father's face. With a last piercing gaze, Winslow Sr. lets go of Raylan and addresses Cyphron.
We will formulate the milestones in my quarters.
He nods at Cyphron and walks away without another look at Raylan. Raylan watches his father cross the hall as Cyphron motions for the uniformed assistants to follow him.
Wow, Cyphron,
he says.
You're full of surprises. General, mistress to your boss, what else do you hide under that tight suit?
Raylan's appetite for a fight is not over yet. The gloves are off. Who's next?
Ray.
Cyphron sighs playfully, shaking her head. Her eyes tell Raylan that a different Cyphron is looking at him, one fueled by greed for power.
It's a pity that you never mastered your emotions.
She explains and softly touches his shoulder.
And that is your weakness.
Whispering, she continues.
You were so promising in school. And then this horrendous Discord career. A good thing your father put an end to that.
Cyphron relishes the surprise on Raylan's face.
He didn't tell you.
She feigns compassion for his ignorance as Raylan stares over at his father across the room.
Remember your trouble with your friend Taryn 3 years ago?
Cyphron says quietly.
Yes, your dad, aka the ATC, put the thumb screws on that Len. 24-hour surveillance. You know how that goes. They'll all break down sooner or later. After all, she was prosecuted for terrorism once. A troublemaker, right?
She mimics the typical Crow phrase. Raylan's eyes widen at the implications. Taryn's inexplicable behavior before she split their triple. She never told him that it was about her fear to get him involved.
And then you were ripe to ruin your Discord career. With a little help from some friends.
Cyphron explains, savoring every second of Raylan's torment.
A fight with a paid player here.
She says.
Party pictures online there. Pressure on the coach from the parents. And a generous donation to the National Discord Committee. Down the drain went your dreams of becoming a Discord star.
Cyphron bathes in Raylan's shock, absorbing his pain like sun rays. She casually shakes her head and murmurs.
Pity you really had some moves.
Raylan feels as if he has not lived in the last 3 years. The what-ifs multiply at an alarming rate in his head. He could have been a professional Discord player. He could have been independent.
It's all a matter of perspective.
He muses over the course his actual life took.
I should be thankful to my dad. He gave my life real purpose.
He cynically concludes, keeping his anger from growing into something physical.
You see, Raylan, your father really wanted you in the fold. You're the only Winslow to keep the Winslow legacy alive. For now.
She adds, glancing at an AMA assistant who listens in devotion to the words of her master chair, Crow Winslow Sr. Cyphron turns back to Raylan with a smug smile on her face.
You see, being the only heir to the chair of a global corporation is your only remaining ace in the hole.
Cyphron tells him.
You've misplayed the rest of your deck.
She looks Raylan up and down as he gazes over to his father with growing rage, intent to beat down on Raylan even more. She adds,
and your worth for Winslow Industries is limited, except...
She stops abruptly and almost fearfully glances at Raylan. Raylan slowly turns back to her and draws her in with his left hand on her shoulder, his back to the crowd. She feels his breath in her ear as he whispers,
You're going down like my father. I will enjoy it. And this is for all the time you stole from me.
Cyphron tries to step back, but Raylan keeps a firm grip on her shoulder. With lightning speed, his right fist rams into her lower ribcage. Cyphron abruptly bends forward, gasping for air and grabbing Raylan's shoulder for support. Raylan steadies her body and leads her to a chair. Cyphron is still silently gasping for air like a fish on land, a bewildered, fearful look on her face. Now, it is his time to enjoy her wild gaze of pain.
Give my regards to your lover.
He spits at her and nonchalantly walks away. No one has noticed their little tussle. Leaving the wheezing Cyphron behind, Raylan ambles toward the elevators. He feels a moment of deep relief, a closure he needs for this part of his life. Earlier than desired, his thoughts turn back toward the Eco's future. He feels dejected by the prospect of having another organization hunting the Ecos. The ATC has already clamped down hard on them, and the Ecos Council was not really helpful in relieving the pressure. While waiting at the elevators, he checks his display. No news from Terran's meeting with the council.
It's a long drive,
he thinks.
They may still be busy at the beachfront.
He tries to calm his worries about the probable decision of the council.
Please, don't shut us down.
He pleads and closes his eyes for a moment, like sending a prayer to the Ecos gods. A group of Winslow executives joins him in the elevator. They chatter excitedly about the new military branch, but Raylan also senses their fleeting glances directed at him. They carry a different notion now, more of pity than of respect. An intense feeling of loneliness overcomes Raylan. Leaving the building, he calls his car. Soon the sleek Toro approaches and rolls to a stop, opening its doors. Deep in thought and feeling utterly alone in this world, Raylan falls into the seat cushions. The doors close and the car briskly accelerates toward the exit of the Winslow headquarters. Raylan closes his eyes as he tries to process today's impressions, and so he misses the black sedan that follows his car at a distance. Oh boy, no one wishes to call that man his father.
No shit, Sherlock.